Hey, what's up guys? Frosty here, back with another hand of the week for you. I didn't receive any submissions on my Facebook page of any hand histories. I wasn't expecting much, but if you do want to be featured in one of these videos and would like to submit a hand to me to be discussed and put on YouTube, just go into your Hold'em Manager or Poker Tracker or whatever tracking program you use, and just go to the hand history and get the text of the hand history, and just send it to me in a Facebook message on my Facebook page. I thought it'd just be a kind of a nice change of pace to review other people's plays, see some different perspectives, and maybe talk about hands that occur at different stakes, and maybe you guys can relate to more play at the lower levels or whatever people want to submit to me, basically. So yeah, in the future, if you'd like, if depending on how many submissions I get, I would gladly talk about the hand series that I get sent to me. Otherwise, I've been getting good feedback about these videos, so I'm happy to just keep talking about my own hands. Anyways, what I've got for you today is a hand that I played today. I played it towards the end of a 3-4 hour session, and I wasn't playing that sharp, and I do make a pretty big mistake in the hand on the turn. But what I really wanted to talk about was the river play. And I guess the theme is kind of when to value bet versus when to be bluff catching. So with that intro out of the way, let's jump into the hand here. So under the gun +1 is going to open, and it's going to fold to us. This player is a short stacker, although nobody's really that short after the buy-in changes have been implemented on stars, which is great. But they are relatively short, and my options are obviously 3-betting or calling, but I think this is a pretty standard flat, even more so because there's a weaker player behind in the cutoff, so it's obviously nice to entice them to come along in the pot. And even though Jacks doesn't play amazing multi-way, I think it plays well enough, and if you do hit a set, you're fairly disguised. And more to the point, I just think that if we 3-bet, it's not a great spot to get the money in, so it seems just bad to be turning this hand into a bluff when we can just call and entice the weaker player into the pot, and even if nobody else comes along, we still obviously have a very strong hand in position. I think I had the stats at the time, and under the gun +1 was folding to like over 70% of 3-bets. So, I mean, it's understandable for short stackers to play a very shove or fold game. They don't really have the stack depth to be calling. But if a player is opening under the gun +1 and loves folding to 3-bets, then I'm going to be even less thrilled to get the money in against somebody who, say, only folds to 40% of 3-bets. Against that player, as long as they're 4-betting a reasonable amount, against that player, I would strongly consider just 3-bet stacking off with jacks. But against somebody who just folds or just shoves like the nutted hands, I think I'm not sure if it's even a profitable play. So, pretty standard flat. Weaker player does come along and everybody else folds. Flop 10-10-9 to diamonds, and the under the gun +1 c-bets. Not a terrific spot, but I don't think we really have many options other than just calling at this point. I looked at this c-bet stat, the 3-way c-bet stat of the villain here. I think it was like close to 60%, so I think that's way too high. I think especially on this board. This board texture is okay to c-bet, I suppose, but I think if you're c-betting 60% in 3-way pots, that's probably too much. And I just kind of assume they're just stabbing with their whole opening range here, like even like ace X type hand. So that said, I probably wouldn't have much of a raising range here with a weaker player behind. I think there's just like more value usually to just call and with your entire range, so like even your nutted hands and your draws, to keep the player in behind you and try to get more value from them later, rather than just raise and try to cooler the under the gun +1 player. And in this case, if we raise here, I mean, we're basically forcing ourselves to call it off. But if the under the gun +1 player gets the money in here, we're almost always behind unless they have like a nut flush draw, and then we're barely ahead. So I really don't think there's a point in raising. So I think at this point it's just again a pretty standard flat for me. So the weaker player comes along and we get a good turn. Um, Bring some more draws if anyone was in there with backdoor hearts, but um, yeah, other than that, we're happy not to see an overcard, and gives us a gut shot straight if we need it, um, and doesn't improve any of the flop draws. I don't think Jack 8 is in either player's range, especially not under the gun +1, possibly in the cutoffs range, but we do block that. So yeah, I'm not worried about straights or anything. Basically just worried under the gun +1 has an overpair or 10x, and not too concerned about the cutoff behind me. I think they're just in there with a wide range of hands, just given their loose play pre-flop. So it's going to check to us, and this is where I just make a pretty big mistake. I think the play is a clear bet at this point. I remember at the time I just wasn't playing very well. I was just kind of like on autopilot almost, just playing a bunch of tables, the end of a long session, and yeah, it got checked me, and I mean, I know what I was afraid of, but it's not really a valid reason. I was just kind of thinking if I bet here, um, I might be value towning myself against under the gun +1, because it is reasonable for them to shut down with an overpair, given that we both called on a 10-10 X flop. I could see a player potentially just like going into check call pot control mode here with like queens or kings, or aces, I guess. And I was also a little concerned about being like check jammed on by like a nut flush draw. But I mean, I don't think those concerns warrant a check. I still think I have the best hand here, the overwhelming amount of the time. And I think at this point my hand just needs a lot of protection, and there's still value to be had by the cutoff behind me if they have a draw or if they have any pair. I don't think they're folding. So I think it's a pretty clear bet here, and in hindsight, I think it's even more of a bet because I ended up checking under the gun a few stats from under the gun +1, which I didn't check in game. I checked their first of all, I checked their turn c-bet percentage, and it was kind of low. It was like 44%, so they're not barreling the turn super often or anything, but their check fold on the turn after c-betting the flop was like 70%. So I think they're just giving up here more than anything. So I don't think I have to be worried about being played back at by them. And if I bet and they call, then I can just check back the river. So I think it's a pretty clear bet for protection and for value. But yeah, like I said, in game I was just not playing too well at the time and ended up checking through. And yeah, I did check through behind. Fortunately, the river completely bricks. And again, under the gun +1 checks. So at this point, I'm like very confident he's just giving up, obviously. And now it gets a little bit interesting. I think most people would just throw in a bet here. I think, they'll just think they have the best hand almost always and to just bet, try to get value. But I'm going to try to make an argument for why I think checking is actually better in this spot particular. Like, before I say anything, it should depend a lot on the villain. If you have any history or reads on the villain, left to act behind, we're really only worried about the player left to act behind us at this point, because I don't think the reg is really calling. I wouldn't expect them to pretty much ever call with worse here, unless they want to like hero with like pocket eights. I think that's probably the only thing that really makes sense. Otherwise, I think they're just check folding. So we're really just concerned about how to get value from the player left behind us. So if they're like a massive calling station, I suppose, and are just gonna call a bet with even like some ace highs, then sure, maybe go for a value bet. But I don't think that's going to be the case. I think given that all the draws bricked out, I mean, to be honest, I just don't really expect expect the player left to act to have too many draws. I think like if they have a flush draw, they're going to be just betting the turn, or like Queen Jack, they might just like bet the turn. But I think more important than that, I think that a lot of players, a lot of like weaker players, anyways, will pounce on this spot with so many bluffs, because the turn gets checked through, and if it gets checked through to them again, they can put us on flush draws and all kinds of draws, and they might just stab at it. So I think like the spaz factor is actually pretty high in this spot if you check to the player. Again, it's going to be a little bit opponent dependent, I suppose, but yeah, I didn't have any reads on this player at all. I was just kind of thinking in a general sense that if I check to this guy, he's he could be liable to bluff, because I think he's calling flop with like, I mean, I guess they fall into the draw category, but I think he's calling the flop with a lot of stuff that is just basically air, like king queen, like I don't know, like king jack. Like sure they have gut shots, but they're not much. Maybe just some ace highs. They could just be calling. So yeah, I think they have quite a bit of missed no pair hands, and I don't think they have a lot of stuff they can call with. Like, I mean, I think if they have like a 9 or like even a 7, they might just bet that themselves. And I just don't think it's super likely for them to have either, or to have a 9 or obviously a 10, because I think they just bet that on the turn most of the time. So yeah, I just think this is kind of a spot where, just in general, I think recreational players will pounce on it a lot with stuff that really doesn't have good showdown value. Maybe they were in there with like 5-6, like the range on the flop is just so wide that I think they can still show up on the river here with a lot of air that they feel like they just need to bet. So yeah, given all that, I did decide to check. And of course, it's going to check through a good amount of the time here, but I think the point is still that there's not like a heck of a lot of hands to be getting value from at this point. So yeah, I am happy with just checking this a lot to basically induce a bluff. And they do bet, and of course I'm calling. I don't think there's a whole lot of merit in check raising here. I just think it's pretty tough to get called by worse. There is the, I mean, there is the odd chance the 10 has been slow played here, but I think it's really unlikely. But there is maybe a better chance of them having like pocket deuces. But yeah, I just don't think there's enough merit in check raising here. I think it's a little bit too thin. But yeah, it's obviously a snap check call. And yeah, they showed up with ace 5, so I don't know what they were thinking on the flop. But yeah, once the turn checked through and the river checked through again, I think they just saw this as a decent spot to just try to bluff and take down the pot. So anyways, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Feel free to leave comments, questions, and like I said at the start of the video, if you guys feel like sending me in some hands, just send me the text in a Facebook message. Alright guys, this has been Frosty. Good luck at the tables.